Hey guys, we're here at UCLA. A lawsuit is being announced against police in connection with the violence that occurred last year. So this is the press conference.
Hey Kim, can you look at me?
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amr Shabaik. That's AMR SHABAIK. Yeah, Amr Shabaik. AMR SHABAIK. And I'm the legal director at CARE Los Angeles. We are here today to announce a lawsuit against the California Highway Patrol and the Los Angeles Police Department for their violent and unjustified crackdown on the peaceful Palestine Solidarity encampment right here at UCLA. In the early morning hours of May 2nd, 2024, law enforcement officers from CHP and LAPD violently attacked students and community members with rubber bullets, batons, and brute force. These students were simply calling for an end to the genocide in Palestine and an end to UCLA's complicity in that genocide. And for that, they were met with state-sponsored violence. The footage from that night is undeniable. The bruises, the injuries, and the trauma are undeniable. Unfortunately, what happened at UCLA is not an isolated incident. It is part of a disturbing national pattern of the Palestine exception to free speech. While college campus protests historically, whether calling for an end to the war in Vietnam or the movement for Black Lives, are viewed as courageous and morally justified, when students protest for Palestinian human rights, dignity, and self-determination, they are met with brutal repression from their schools and law enforcement. Across the country, from coast to coast, universities have called upon these militarized law enforcement agencies to silence student voices demanding justice for Palestine. Campuses that should be the bastions of free speech and free thought have become battlegrounds of repression. At Columbia, at Emory, at the University of Texas, and right here at UCLA. The events at UCLA stand as a stark reminder and a stark example of how campuses across the country have unjustly utilized large, coordinated militarized police response to stifle speech advocating for Palestine. On April 30th, 2024, and into the night of May 1st, the night before the law enforcement attack on the encampment, the country witnessed an unhinged mob of pro-Israeli terrorists violently, brutally, and relentlessly attacking the pro-Palestinian Solidarity encampment. Law enforcement agents watched and shrugged their shoulders. After this hate-filled mob attack ended, and while many protesters were still seeking medical attention for their injuries, the militarized law enforcement of the CHP and LAPD moved in on them. This lawsuit is about drawing a line. It's about saying that students have the right to speak without being brutalized and violently attacked by law enforcement. It's about holding law enforcement accountable when they treat dissent as a crime and inflict violence onto those dissenting voices. We will not allow unchecked violence to become the default response to peaceful protest, whether from terroristic mobs or from law enforcement. And we will not allow our rights to be trampled under the violent boot of political pressure. It is that violence we are here to challenge, loudly, clearly, and in court. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
You can grab the mic. That would be
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Brown. I'm an attorney with Hadsel, Stormer, Rennick, and Dye. Thank you all for being here. I'm joined here today by our four clients, Abdullah Pucket, David Ramirez, Kira Leighton, and Islam Kwari Wokenpool, as well as my co-counsel, to announce that we have filed a lawsuit against the state of California and the city of Los Angeles for the California Highway Patrols and Los Angeles Police Department's use of unlawful and excessive force against peaceful demonstrators at UCLA's Palestine Solidarity encampment. As my colleague Amr explained, 1 year ago this week, police officers from these departments destroyed a peaceful multi-faith encampment here up behind the steps on Royce Quad. They fired supposedly less lethal munitions, which are commonly known as rubber bullets, indiscriminately and at close range at the protesters in the encampment, destroying the encampment and terrorizing the peaceful students, faculty members, and community members who had all simply gathered to show their solidarity for the victims of Israel's violence in Gaza. Law enforcement's reckless violence in the early morning hours of May 2nd caused numerous injuries to these peaceful demonstrators, and poster boards that we have here, including broken bones, blood loss, and long-lasting trauma. We are bringing this lawsuit because CHP and LAPD violated our clients' rights that are guaranteed and protected under California law. The state of California prohibits this exact type of indiscriminate and dangerous use of these supposedly less lethal weapons on peaceful protesters. But this prohibition is meaningless if we don't hold law enforcement accountable when they execute these coordinated attacks on peaceful demonstrators. The state of California and the city of Los Angeles cannot deploy militarized state violence to silence protests, even when they disagree with the message. We're bringing this lawsuit knowing that this was not just an attack on these students, faculty members, and community supporters standing in solidarity with Palestine, but an attack on our right to free speech. Our four plaintiffs, Abdullah, David, Kira, and Islam, have bravely brought this case, not only to recover from the pain and suffering they experienced at the hands of CHP and LAPD, but to hold the state and the city accountable to ensure this doesn't happen again. As their attorneys, we are honored to stand with them and as they tell their stories here today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here.
You're going to have to be a little bit closer to those mics, or it doesn't matter what you're saying. You won't get hurt.
My name is David Ramirez, D-A-V-I-D-R-A-M-I-R-E-Z. I'm a community member and was part of the UCLA pro-Palestine encampment. Having the opportunity to be around international students from Palestinian to Jewish folk was conducive to my understanding of the ethnic cleansing happening in Palestine for the last 76 years. Watching entire lineages of families being subject to weapons of mass destruction while the Israeli occupation force bragged about it on social media was unbearable to process. As a proud Chicano, indigenous to this land, I must speak out against state-sanctioned genocide of indigenous people and demand land back. Every day the encampment was up, we were subject to violence by a mob of Zionists. This was reported to UCLA administration and was heavily documented. Yet, UCLA failed to respond and intervene. Allowing violence from pro-genocide Zionists to go unchallenged emboldened their behavior and escalated to the violence we experienced on the night of April 30th, 2024. The media misrepresented the conflict and blamed both sides for the violence, which is false. LAPD then used this narrative to justify the even more violent raid of the encampment. That night, I found myself on my hands and knees with excruciating pain above my temple, realizing I'd been hit. Everything around me moving slowly and nothing but ringing in my ear. I discovered a large rubber bullet lodged in my skin, as you can see on the image behind me. My first instinct was to remove the foreign object, but it triggered profusive bleeding. To the students and community members that helped me that night, I want to say thank you for saving my life. Thank you for stopping the bleeding and driving me to the medical center. I don't think I would have made it without you. A few things became clear to me that night. UCLA is not a campus safe for civil and human rights activists. I also learned LAPD has loyalty to Zionists over American security. To the people of Palestine, I'm sorry my tax dollars are funding the genocide. To anyone listening, I want to remind you that together we hold power, people power, and spending power. We don't have to live in a society where our money funds the persecution of our black and brown people both domestically and abroad. Que viva Palestina libre. Thank you.
Over here so we can get a calendar. Oh, sorry. It was blocked by that cable.
David Ramirez, D-A-V-I-D-R-A-M-I-R-E-Z. community member.
Good morning. My name is Abdullah Pucket, Abdullah Puckett.
Dylan, can you say that one more time?
My name is Abdullah Pucket, Abdullah Puckett. And I'm a PhD student in the Department of Anthropology here at UCLA. My research focuses on social justice activism. And as we stand here today at the Tongva Steps, it is important to reflect on how the Palestine Solidarity Encampment fits into the long history of social justice activism led by students, both here at UCLA and in this country as a whole. My own parents, like the parents and grandparents of so many Black Californians, were Jim Crow refugees. The apartheid-like conditions imposed by Israel on the Palestinian people resembles the oppression of that shameful episode of American history. It was right here at the Tongva Steps that Dr. Martin Luther King spoke to a group of students about the importance of working to end Jim Crow by participating in the Freedom Summer protests of 1964. The direct result of that, of which was the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was here at UCLA that student protests played a pivotal role in getting the UC and other universities and entities across the country to divest from apartheid in South Africa in 1985. It was student activists here at UCLA who occupied Campbell Hall in 1969 and demanded the establishment of the African American Studies program. Woo! So when students established the Palestine Solidarity Encampment here in April of 2024, it filled me with admiration to see the determined intentionality with which these students were following in this tradition. An innumerable amount of people were able to benefit from the consciousness-raising political education that took place within the encampment. Much of it reflecting on and linked to the previously mentioned activism. As someone studying social justice activism as part of my research at this university, it was an honor to be able to visit and do some of that work at the encampment. A major focus of my research is police repression in social movements. As such, it was unsurprising to see that an integral part of the political education within the encampment were links between the repression of Palestinians and the training of U.S. police departments, and how those same tactics were being taught by the IDF to police officers, to U.S. police officers, for use against people here in America. The terrifying scenes of how the police stood by while young students within the encampment were attacked by violent fascist elements clearly mirrors the way in which Israeli law enforcement and troops stand by and watch settler violence against Palestinians. The horrid scenes of how militarized police attacked unarmed, peaceful protesters. The same night I was shot by police, unprovoked, with my hands up, reflects the way in which we have all seen the IDF bomb and commit mass murder against unarmed and defenseless Palestinian women and children. This alone is enough of an argument that all links supporting Israeli militarism should be cut, especially the links between the IDF and U.S. law enforcement and military. What took place here is a crystal clear sign that if we do not stand against the oppression that others like the Palestinians face abroad, those methods of repression will be used against us here in America. We cannot allow them to continue to use these tactics with impunity. Not at UCLA, not in LA County, not in America, and nowhere else in the world.
Hello, my name is Kira Leighton, Kiralayton. I am a UCLA undergraduate student. Almost exactly a year ago to this day, I was shot twice by the police using what they call less lethal munitions. These may be less lethal than a metal bullet, but they can kill and maim people. During the police raid, I was shot in the back, leaving me badly bruised, and in my right hand, breaking 4 bones. It stopped my life completely. I couldn't work, I couldn't go to school. I had to move out of the apartment I was living with to stay with my mom. I couldn't sleep. All of this for taking part in a protest against a genocide that my university continues to profit from. At 2 in the morning, the police raided the encampment. They started by firing into the air, loud flashbangs that sounded like gunshots. There was smoke and light and everything felt confused. There was no clear exit and no paramedics, but they continued to fire. Into the air at first, and then at the crowd. I was separated from my friends in the chaos and suddenly felt a sharp pain, feeling another impact quickly after. The feeling was so intense that I wasn't sure where I was hit or what had happened. I screamed and tried to find help. Students had set up an impromptu medics tent. I asked them to help me leave so I could go to the hospital, and no one knew how to get out. They looked at my hand, which had swollen up to the size of a baseball, and gave me the only thing they had to help, an Advil. After waiting, someone came who knew how to leave. They snuck me out through some bushes in the back of the quad and helped me find my sister, who was at the protest outside. When we were walking, trying to find a way out, all I remember was hearing a series of flashbangs. I was terrified for my friends who remained in the encampment. When we got close to the road, we ran into a paramedic and 2 police officers. The 2 police officers that were there taunted me and shoved my sister as I was crying and screaming in pain. The paramedic did nothing to help me. We ran away from the police and eventually managed to get to the ER, but the pain I felt did not go away for days, even with intense pain medication. I felt continuous and terrible pain for weeks after. Along with the pain, I felt an intense fear that I would never regain use of my right hand. The breaks were so severe and so many that I needed screws put into my metacarpal bones to hold them in place as they healed. After the surgery, I needed intense physical therapy. I'm still terrified every time I see police, especially on campus. When I came back to the school in the fall, I would have frequent panic attacks in classes, and I started failing my classes for the first time in my life. The fear I experienced that night is something that is still with me. And since that day, the police have continued to show up to our campus in riot gear to brutalize and arrest students. Just last week, they sent another student to the ER with injuries. As people exercise their right to free speech and call for an end to a genocide, our institution responds with violence to peaceful protests. In the last year alone, UCLA has spent $50 million on the police. We have all watched as the people of Gaza have gone through suffering so much greater than my own, being injured by shrapnel and bombs, having their family members murdered, having their houses destroyed. We have watched as children, journalists, doctors, academics, and civilians have been killed. There can never be any justification for this type of unspeakable violence. Every university and hospital has been bombed. We have a responsibility to one another. We are all implicated in this. Our tax dollars and our tuition is funding this violence at home and abroad. Please listen to our stories and don't look away as our fellow humans are killed. You are implicated in this. I ask you to join us in calling for peace in Gaza and calling for an end to the use of violent weapons that function as a way to repress free speech.
My name's Thomas Harvey. I'm an attorney. THOMAS-HARVEY. First, I just want to say we're going to wrap up after my comments, and we'll take questions if you'd like, but please direct them to the attorneys on the cases, not the individual plaintiffs at this time. I want to say a couple things that I think are critical to frame this, and we hope are included in the writing about this. The plaintiffs we represent are very committed to any kind of action that can end the genocide in Gaza and UC's investment in companies that profit from that. That's their main focus, not the injuries that happened to them as a result of their protest. Two, I think the framing also needs to include the fact that in the history of the University of protests at the University of California, it is very often and sometimes only the case that the violence that we saw on April 30th and then May 1st and 2nd comes towards people who are protesting in favor of a free Palestine. There is an exception to free speech. There's a dehumanization that goes on, not only with the law enforcement and the university, but also with the journalists that write about it. Please make every effort to frame that appropriately and talk about the way that this exception has operated and allowed and produced violence against the people you see here before you. The third thing I'd like to say is that while this violence is incredible and overwhelming, and we are actually living under an increasingly fascist state, it's important to note that the actions of the Trump administration are not the only actions of police violence and weaponization of police that we need to be concerned about. Everything that you've heard about today, everything that you read in this lawsuit, occurred under a Democratic mayor in a would-be liberal city, under a Democratic governor in a would-be liberal state, under a Democratic president in a would-be liberal regime. Those folks encouraged and were complicit in the violence that occurred to the brave protesters who made up the Palestine Solidarity Encampment. This lawsuit is just one of dozens of lawsuits that either have been filed or will be filed against UCLA and the police for their brutality and violence against faculty, students, and community members in the Palestine Solidarity Encampment. This case illustrates the Palestine exception to free speech. Compare the police response to their actions. Compare their actions on May 1st and 2nd to the encampment members, where they shot them with rubber bullets, violently beat them, and arrested more than 200 people, to how they reacted to people who attacked the encampment the night before. Not a single arrest was made during that attack that was broadcast on TV for more than 4 hours. Ask yourselves why that happened. The answer is very clear. Our clients hope that this lawsuit will tell the story of the violence that occurred to them, and within the context of the flagship campus of a university system that has the audacity to proclaim its role in the free speech movement. That framing is exceedingly important. UCLA and the UC system continues to pretend as if it is a place where freedom of expression can exist and is welcome, and it invites students to come and do that and advertises based on it. But when people do express their point of view, especially if it's in support of Palestine, they are met with ruthless violence. Thank you very much, and we'll take questions now from the team.
Is it your contention, gentlemen, lady, pardon me, counselors, is it your contention that there was no warning given, no dispersal order given, nothing at all, that police just moved forward, no warning, and began using less lethal?
In terms of the force specifically, I'm not aware of any warnings that any type of force would be used. There were dispersal orders given, disputed on how well those were broadcast and heard, but there was absolutely no warning, at least to my knowledge, of that force was going to be used, and people did not disperse or comply with whatever was being ordered.
None of the people, none of your plaintiffs' clients heard those warnings at all?
Regarding force, not to my
No, regarding you're subject to arrest if you don't leave, if you don't do that type of thing. None of them heard that.
Well, we're just focusing on the force aspect right now.
Any indication that there was...
I want to address that. You may or may not be aware that they started giving incorrect dispersal orders 12 hours in advance. So there was so much confusion and misdirection on the part of the people who were organizing this raid that there was no real meaningful opportunity to understand what the directions were. And there was absolutely no warning about this use of force. And it was absolutely contrary to the law. You cannot shoot less lethals at the heads of people who are peacefully protesting.
Is there a support for your lawsuit based on the fact that the District Attorney of Los Angeles County and the City Attorney inclined to file any charges, criminal or otherwise, against the people who were here? Does that bolster your case in the civil aspect?
I think that's certainly. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's right.
I think that's incredibly important. I mean, as we talked about, there were hundreds of arrests, and the fact that the city attorney's office and the district attorney's office declined to file and prosecute those speaks to just how poorly and unlawfully this night was handled by CHP, by LAPD, and the numerous other law enforcement agencies that were there.
The after-action reports indicate that rather than the LAPD and the CHP, they put a good deal of the blame on the university administration, not firmly deciding when and how these protests would be allowed to continue or be mandated to stop. And there was a disconnect between what they wanted to have happen and the officers that were actually eventually called in to try to break up the encampment and clear the area. I mean, why go after the LAPD and why go after the CHP when it was the university administration that, pardon the phrase, screwed the pooch?
There are other lawsuits that are addressing the university administration and the UC regents. In this case specifically, we are focusing on the use of the kinetic impact projectiles, the 40 millimeter rubber bullets, and those were fired by CHP and LAPD personnel.
How many plaintiffs are in the lawsuit?
We have 4 plaintiffs, and we have copies of the complaint if folks would like one.
And are you all standing with
Yes, these are photos of our plaintiffs' injuries.
are the plaintiffs standing with them? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Not everyone. This is David standing with his, Kira standing next to hers, and here's Abdullah with his.
Oh.
And then we have a 4th plaintiff, Islam, who is not present. Photos of her. The photos are also in the complaint.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, guys. Looks like that's the end of the press conference. So as you heard, they're announcing a lawsuit against law enforcement in connection with the violence, the violence that occurred at the pro-Palestine encampment. And if you're just, sorry about that, if you're just tuning in, this is Eric LeVay, and I'm an investigative reporter who's been reporting on the, mostly on the mob attack, but I did want to come see this. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will talk soon. Take care.